see Renato just joined us, and we're just waiting for Vicky. Hey, Renato, welcome to the Vivid Days.
Hey, guys.
Awesome. Great to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Great session. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. So as we wait for Vicky, Renato, is there anything you wanted to add to that you may have missed in the session that you think folks should know?
I think that the important aspect here is you probably got that in the session. We try to make it very informative and very focused on the task at hand and what is shift to left and what are we doing in terms of capabilities. And what you saw in the session is stuff that we're working on right now, and you're going to see coming to fruition over the course of the next year. So you see me and Vicky working together in bringing the capabilities of functional and performance together under the same hood. So our goal is to get to a point where someone say, I want to have a shift to left agenda and I want to have tools to help me with that. We're going to have one product that can land in and help you do all that. So that's the goal. And we're very excited about it, especially when you bring the scripting capability with service virtualization capability and scalability in the cloud with LoadRunner cloud. So it's quite interesting. We're very excited about it.
No, I agree. I think it's really exciting. I just didn't even know that you actually are going to, I took a screenshot of that. You're going to support things like Gatling, JMeter, and Selenium. That's pretty wild. Is this available now, or did this just come out, this type of functionality?
That's a very good question. We already have separated. We have it already support, right? So if you go, for instance, with UFT Developer and you have shift to left agenda, the goal here with UFT Developer is, well, we have an SDK for web in terms of Selenium that can kind of compete with Selenium, but we know that customers will adopt Selenium anyway. So we are just adding capabilities on top of it with UFT Developer. And in the case of performance, Vicky already has those capabilities in UFT Cloud, LoadRunner Cloud and LoadRunner Enterprise. So we already have those. They are in the products already. You can use them.
Awesome. So I know LeanFT has been around for a while and allows you to write scripts in Java. And it utilizes the awesome technology of UFT behind the scenes. Is this something similar? Like what functionality on top of Selenium are you providing with the functional piece of it?
Very good question. We actually, if you take, and we're starting to use new names. So we all know LeanFT, and it became UFT Developer. So it's the same product, but it's an evolution of it. It will become an evolution of it. Today in Selenium, we provide you a couple things, right? One, we provide you different locator strategies. So you can actually find objects using different strategies. We have an extension for Selenium to do that. You can also using our awesome LeanFT reporter, and you can actually create functional testing reports using the UFT Developer reporter for Selenium scripts. And you can mix images, screenshots, locatoring strategy, all in the reports. So those are the two things that we have today. As we go over the course of the year, you're going to see us doing more. So we have the OIC, which allows people to easily define locators for Selenium. And we're going to start creating more stuff like recording capabilities and editing capabilities of Selenium and UFT Developer. We're going to do the same for Appium, by the way.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is exciting. Hey, I see Vicky joined us. Hey, Vicky. Welcome to the Vivid.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, Vicky, I was really excited to see some things around performance with Gatling integration. And how does that work with LoadRunner? Is it LoadRunner and Gatling integration or performance in general? How does that work?
Yeah, so actually that's a great question because it's part of the idea where we want to reuse assets that have been previously developed by other people, in this case, most likely developers. Currently, we follow pretty much the same concept as we did with JMeter. So we are able to take those JMeter scripts and run it as they are without the need to tweak or to convert those scripts. And with Gatling, we follow the same approach. Basically, that same script, we will just be able to execute it in the LoadRunner family. Currently, that's only possible as it is today using LoadRunner Cloud with LoadRunner Load, but the plan is actually to expand that to the rest of the LoadRunner family, LoadRunner Professional and LoadRunner Enterprise by 2020. We expect by the first half.
Wow, that's really exciting. And I'm not just saying it because you're micro-focused, but to me, LoadRunner is still the industry standard for enterprise-wide performance. If you have to do real performance testing enterprise-wide, you probably definitely need LoadRunner. So how does Gatling and these other tools then come in? Is this more for, as you shift left, for your smaller type performance tests?
Yes, so you are totally right. LoadRunner is still the leader in the market. After more than 25 years, we are still dominating this market. Actually, LoadRunner invaded the performance market. So we are, as you can see, I'm very, very proud of this. We have seen different ways on how the performance is actually moving from performance testing to performance engineers. And this is actually requires other people to get on board and to do performance. These can be developers and also dev testers. We have found many cases where these persons would like to use different tools because of preference mainly. Also flexibility of those tools. For example, they run on a different platform. It's not attached to Windows. The IDE is different. It also allows a different language. And there are gaps that we are very slowly closing, but then I will talk a little bit later in regards to the introduction of LoadRunner Developer. But regardless of that, we find out that in many cases it's actually the customer preference, and we will see different business units and users actually utilizing different tools, like the case of Gatling, JMeter, Appium, Selenium. And we just decided that, we are not going to fight against them. As a family, we provide way more capabilities than those scripting tools, for example. So our approach here is just we're going to go ahead and embrace them. We know there are some people that already put a lot of effort creating those scripts for whatever reason it is. So the goal of the performance family is actually to leverage those scripts, to reuse those assets, mainly developer assets. And like I said, we are actually complementing the story against how do we reuse those assets, how do we take into consideration the time and effort that somebody already put creating those. And of course, complements again very well the Shiftleft, with developers and dev testers are also participated earlier in the development cycle. They are doing some sort of testing. But at the end, when you want to do end-to-end testing, you want to scale, you want to generate load from different geographic locations, you want to be able to trend, to identify patterns, to have an online analysis, you want to do real root cause analysis and so on, you're definitely going to need one of our products. And this is why we just allow the execution of those specs in the context of performance and load.
Awesome stuff. Renato, is there anything you want to add before we get to the very first question? Yeah, I think you muted yourself, Renato. I don't know if you muted yourself, but I can't hear you.
I did mute myself. I'm sorry.
Okay, awesome. So, all right, we'll get to the very first question. We're going to take it up a level now. The question is, what's the biggest challenge you see when shifting left, and what tips do you have on how to solve it? Either one of you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest challenge that you will find when you are trying to shift left, it's actually a cultural change. Because this represents a change in the way on how normally not only you as a performance engineer, but also the developers will be doing the work. Normally, performance was also reserved to be done at the end, and it was actually done by the QA team, the performance engineers. And in the past, we were not talking directly with the developers. Now this has changed, and of course, there is a need to incorporate the testing in earlier as possible in the development cycle. And some specific tasks also will be part now of the developers. Therefore, a lot of people, and based on my experience with multiple customers, they will see, of course, cultural change. So this is different. Now, what's actually my role? What's my responsibility? How do I ensure that I work together and I collaborate with this new person that is now also doing performance testing? How do we make sure that there is collaboration and the information and the feedback flows between one person versus the other? I would say that's one of the main challenges that we are seeing. Renato?
You took it all. So no, actually, I want to compliment that. I think that from the functional perspective, it's interesting because you see on functional, you see almost like a symbiotic relationship between the QA and development now, because you're going from a center of excellence type of approach to a cross-functional team approach. And in that perspective, a lot of times you see now a team of 10 people, an agile team of 10 people. Well, from those 10, most likely 8 are developers and 2 are testers, right? Or automation engineers coming in. So a lot of times there will be some questions about, well, what do I do with my existing assets? So I invested in UFT. I created all my scripts in UFT already, but now I have this new movement that I got to get the developers embracing what I'm doing. So I think that's a challenge in terms of what are the best assets to use. Our recommendation is, well, your UFT assets can be maintained and plugged directly into your CI/CD pipeline. So those should exist. And if you're creating new assets and you want to augment the automation, you want to use the power of the numbers, right? The power is in the strength. The strength is in the numbers. So you now have 8 people that can help you augment automation code. So that's when people start shifting into UFT Developer, right? So they kind of have a plan. But Vicky nailed it. I think the biggest challenge is really around cultural and how these teams go from center of excellence to cross-functional. What are their roles? What are their responsibilities?
Awesome. And I think the next question we have is from Carlos. It kind of centers around this transformation and issues with developers in that considering a big organization like an enterprise that has projects using multiple methodologies, waterfall, agile, Scrum, DevOps, how do you change the software development factory's mindset to implement shift left cultures at the company?
So let me just see if I got the question right. When you say software factories, that's important. A lot of organizations, especially enterprise, they work with outsourced companies, right? So then what happens is, well, you're doing development outside, so the software factory is doing it for you. Is that the kind of software factory we're talking about?
I'm not sure. I didn't specify, Carlos. If you still on, can you submit clarification on that? Let's say it is what he's talking about and address that.
Okay, because that's one of the challenges, right? A lot of times when you're working with software factories, the mix is when you basically have an outsourced company doing the development for you, and most of the times the client or the customer is either doing QA or testing themselves, or they even hire another company to actually provide the testing services for them. So it's a mix and match. The challenge with shift left in that situation is, again, I don't think it's more technical, because in this day and age, you can create pipelines that support geographic development very, very effectively. It's more about how do you establish your process and you establish contracts to make sure that these things happen. I think the best way of doing it is to use the definition of done as your guideline, and then push that into your contracts and the way people work for you. So now you have a definition of done. You're saying, I'm accepting a story or a feature or an epic or whatever is the level of acceptance you want to throw. You use that and a definition of done for that to hold people accountable for the levels of quality you're doing. I would say that's probably the best way of doing it, is establish a process that can help you do that.
Yeah, I will just add that, and it's also another recommendation on how you can start shifting left is actually to start with a small or a new project, because it is quite hard just to break those walls, and then if you already have, like Renato said, established process and so on, just to kind of change everything at one point, it's quite difficult. So I would recommend just to start with a new project, a new task, and then scale from there. Get everybody familiar with the new way on how shifting left, how the ownership is now changed or rebalanced, learn the new roles and responsibilities, start the new process, get everybody familiar with it, and then scale out. I mean, you have started with a small one, like I said, and then you can replicate the success.
Absolutely. So this may seem a little pessimistic. I was working for a large company. They had multiple agile sprint teams, and we used to do behavior-driven development, but they just checked it as definition of done. Yeah. I don't care. How do you I mean, really get that culture tuned in where it's not just a check mark on your definition of done. Any experience with helping drive that kind of thought process into the culture or mindset shift?
I would say, let's take Vicky's idea, right?
Yeah.
Going project by project, because culture, it's easier when you prove a culture shift is effective, then you convince the others, look, this is the right way to do it. What we've done, or I've seen people doing before, is you have the definition of done, but then when you get your sprint review, you use that to guide acceptance. Meaning, someone sits, like the product owner and the team lead or whoever structure you have, someone sits with the business, and the product owner uses the quality aspects of the definition of done as hardcore no-go decisions. Basically, you would go and say, well, we do behavior-driven development. Okay, so I go to the QA guy, not to the dev guys. I use one of my QA guys to walk me through the stories and validate the definition of done. Like, is this coverage valid? Because a lot of times people will put a test case, create a trace, and say, hey, it's covered, green, great. Well, and then you check the code and there is no assertions, right? For instance. So using the QA guide to guide the evaluation of the quality criteria of the definition of done is a great tool. And you do that on a sprint review. So if for whatever reason you don't accept the story on that sprint review, you say that story is going to be carried over for the next sprint because we didn't do testing properly, right? So you have to have that as a compass to evaluate, accept or don't accept a story at the end of a sprint. I think that will be an effective way of doing it.
Awesome advice. Vicky, anything around that before we get to the next question?
No, I think, yeah, let's go to the next one.
All right. Yeah, I just want to do a follow-up on that, but I'll get to the question first and then interject my own thoughts. Next question is, it's from Jonathan. He wants to know, you mentioned shift left in regards to performance engineering. How do you plan to support developers through the IDE? Vicky, you didn't mention this, and I was like, wow, blew my mind. So how do you plan to support developers in the IDE for performance testing?
Excellent. So I'm actually very, very excited because by mid-December, and actually it's now on tech preview, but we were going to go live by mid-December, but I'm very happy to announce that finally we have a tool for developers, LoadRunner Developer. It is currently on tech preview, and the customers can find it on their TrueWeb or DevWeb name. It is actually a plugin for the IDE. So we allow the customers not only to create your scripts, but they can also modeling scenarios via YAML. They can also run load tests. They can integrate with the most common developer tools, for example, Git for source control and Jenkins for CI/CD. They can kick off a load test, and even they can get results, basic results and metrics, utilizing the resources from your local machine. All of this without the need to leave the IDE. In the past, we were trying, and actually this is why the performance products have many integrations with IDE, but that will mean somehow they need to leave their own environment. So we understood that, and this is why we created LoadRunner Developer. It was created with the mindset of a developer, what's exactly what a developer wants, and it's actually to work and do everything directly from the IDE. Like I said, from scripting, modeling, execution, review the results, and be able to reiterate and to follow the process directly from there. This is actually the first time that we are offering this capability, and we are quite excited because we have received extremely positive feedback from developers that are actually using the product. LoadRunner DevWeb or LoadRunner Developer, I consider it marks all the checks box for shift-left performance testing. It's lightweight, it's very easy to install, to download, to get. It runs on any IDE and also on any CI because it's pretty much like a command line tool. It will allow you to see the results directly on the IDE. You can even run tests, get the results, even source control your script using Git. So everything without the need to leave the IDE. And I think it's, like I said, it actually marks all the checks for Shiftleft performance. And we already have developers that are using it. And we are quite excited for the future of LoadRunner Developer.
Awesome. Renato, any thoughts around that? I don't know how much you deal with that piece.
I'm just excited to see it, and working together. It's probably the first time, Vicky, that we're able to actually bring the two together, right? The functional and performance under the same hood. Thanks to this, right? We're now under the IDE using common languages. We now are able to actually provide capabilities that can actually complement each other and expand what we do. So it's quite exciting.
Very cool. So I guess once again, pessimistic. Renato, you mentioned usually you have like 8 developers and 2 testers, and you have all these awesome integrations now with developer tools. How many developers actually have you seen actually embrace this though, and not say, "Oh, that's for my tester on my team"?
That's a very good question. I think, again, it's all about how you drive your team, right? It's cultural more than anything. I've seen, if you show developers that, one, we care about quality and they will be responsible to create and maintain the quality assets. And more importantly, the moment they see you holding back stories and carrying them over because the quality isn't there, the cultural shift, right? Because when you go to Agile, it's all about empowering the team to do the right thing. And that's great. But they really want to do the right thing, right? And someone is actually going to hold them accountable for it. So it's all about accountability, which I love in the whole team empowerment thing is you're giving them the power to drive their direction, to own their own destiny. But at the same time, you're holding them accountable for the outcome, right? They are accountable for the quality now. They are part of the game. They are not just, they're moving away from, I'll write code and you check if I'm doing the right things or not. It's, you own that, right? It's on you. And the QA guys keep that flame very bright within the teams, which is great, right? They bring that mentality. And if you use them to hold the others accountable, I think you see the shift. It's unavoidable, right? All you got to do is hold a couple of stories and say, I'm not accepting that because it doesn't have the quality I want. That drives them nuts, right? So they will get on board. Either get on board or go work for another company, I guess.
Yeah, I will add, based on my experience, one of the things that works pretty well when shifting left is actually the collaboration and actually also the developers to feel part of the end product. And also to get that feedback earlier and also that is actionable and they can actually fix problems with true feedback. It's not something, the application just crashed in production and you go ahead and figure out what happened. It is actually, we find out that this very earliest stage that the user experience or the transaction response time is not going to get affected. So it represents actually a challenge for the developer just to get that feedback and to fix it earlier as possible. So it's not only it's your fault, you go ahead and fix it. It's, there are other ways on how you can improve and to deliver to the best one. And we have seen it already in many different companies. And I will add with LoadRunner Developer that is currently on tech preview. Many customers, big enterprise organizations are already leveraging it and they see as a great opportunity. And this is also for another topic of discussion on how we are enable the developers to take part on the testing, but at the same time, it will also help them because they don't have the time, to provision a big environment. So the performance team will be able to help the developers with that. So definitely brings the teams together in a close collaboration.
Awesome. A few more questions coming in. Let's get to the next question. They want to know, you say to accelerate productivity in your IDE SDK of choice. Can you elaborate on what tools and an example of how we can do this?
Vicky, you want to go first?
Sure. I think this is in regards on the, like I said in the call, in the presentation, multiple SDKs and frameworks that, of course, increase complexity. So our response to that is it's actually our tools support one of the largest range when it comes to SDK and framework. With just a single tool, you will be able to pretty much test from web and mobile applications to mainframes, databases, virtualized environments, and so on. So definitely that will help to focus the performance or the functional efforts, because there is no need to learn or to use multiple tools. And then, of course, to maintain all those scripts that are generated in multiple tools. So a single tool, a single set of skills definitely will help you to accelerate and, of course, to focus your efforts.
Yeah, it's all about, again, you're reusing what you know, right? So you have your IDE knowledge already, so you don't need to be worried about how do I set up a working context, what is my project going to look like, folders, files. Then you talk about how do you integrate with CI. Well, I'm already using Git. Jenkins is plugged in. For functional, it's quite interesting, because now you're talking about, well, what framework do you want to use? Well, you can build your harness with JUnit, TestNG, or behavior-driven development, or whatever else you want to use. And then you have the SDKs, and the SDKs here are about, there's a mix between SDK and tools, but the SDKs is, well, Selenium is an SDK, Appium is an SDK. And what we've been doing is, can we help people be more productive with it, right? Like in Vicky's case, can I reuse? It could start with simply reusing the knowledge, then to executing and making that part of your harness. And then how do we add productivity tools on top of it? So it's a layered concept, right? You can start just by, I can run this in my environment. In the case of, for instance, LoadRunner Cloud, I can just pick up my JMeter script and run it. And now I have more data analytics capability. I can scale it more. I can have environments on demand. And you're using still the script is not written with our tools. So it's not our SDK. It's someone else's SDK. So that's the idea, right? Is to allow people to reuse their assets, reuse their knowledge, and actually then make it better for them, right? Add value on where value doesn't exist necessarily.
I love it. It's like adding a wrapper on top of it. You're enhancing the capabilities. And I'm not just saying this once again. You folks have been doing this for 20 plus years. So you built in best practices you've learned along the way. I just don't know why more people wouldn't take advantage of a solution like this for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What shift or change should I prepare for as a tester in the ever-adapting world of software development and delivery? I know we hear a lot about AI. I didn't see much about AI. I may have missed it. Is AI going to be baked in there somewhere to shift everything left and do it automatically for everyone? What's the vision there?
I'll let Vicky go. You start. I'll jump on.
Well, actually, it is interesting because AI and predictives are one of the biggest strengths for FY20 when it comes to performance. And we see it in many ways. So, for example, we could leverage AI in the context of creating scripts, just to identify, for example, changes in the application and how potentially the script can also change. So think about it in the context of True Client, for example, which is object-based, and how, maintaining scripts when objects are changing or are moving around, it can be sometimes a little bit challenging and time-consuming. So if we leverage AI on that concept, definitely it's something that we will be exploring. Renato, of course, can expand more in regards to the plans that we have, and then the functional is leading, and in performance, we are just, going to leverage the approach that they are working on. But also, AI can be leveraged in the context of analysis, and also, once again, to help the customer to focus the performance efforts, just to identify what are the particular areas on a application or a multiple applications that indeed are always failing. And that's there where we just want definitely to focus at testing efforts. We can also identify patterns, trends, that definitely it will improve the quality, because, again, we will be focusing the efforts on specific areas based on historical data and, of course, AI. Some of the things, for example, from a system perspective, We are already working on it, and they are already implemented. For example, the smart correlations, that is something that it will be part of LoadRunner Developer for FY20. And in the context of AI and predictives and machine learning, just to throw another ones, it's part of the big initiative that you most likely will hear me talking about when it comes to the chair analysis for all the performance products.
Yeah, on the functional side, we already have invested a lot in AI, and we took the route, instead of taking the route of the regression in the statistics that everybody in the market it's looking very hard into. We said, well, what is the biggest issues that we face in automation? And two highlights came up, right? One was script maintenance and how can we reduce that? And the second one was skill set. For the shift to left perspective, I think the script maintenance is really the key here. The new AI SDK that we are working on, we started with UFT 1 as the script, but over the course of the next year, you're going to see us bringing that into the shift to left. So the SDK today, our AI initiative is being built. It's SDK neutral. So we will be able to provide the AI capabilities that we're working on for people writing code in Java or JavaScript or whatever it is that they want to use. The beauty of AI for us in that space is you now, instead of creating assets for multiple platforms, so let's say you have an automation framework and let's say if you're using, for instance, page objects, right? And your page objects are using basically locators to find the objects. So you have a page object for iOS, you have a page object for Android, and you have a page object for Chrome, let's say. With our AI capability, we're pushing that platform perspective into the neural network. So the decision of, oh, this is iOS, or this is Android, or this is browser, gets done now into the AI layer. So all you got to say is click on the OK button, and then the AI layer will take care of understanding, oh, you're looking for an OK button on iOS or Android or Chrome. It wouldn't matter. It would be the same thing. So that's one way of looking at it. We're also looking at it for the future, that once we're done with all this layer, we're also looking around how can we use that for doing automatic automation, if you will. So we want to be able to say, for instance, in mobile, analyze user journeys in production and say, well, when you run your test, you cover these journeys, but in reality, you're missing this journey right here. Do you want me to automate that for you? And then we want to use AI to actually understand what that flow is and write the script for you. And now you need now is to plug data on top and off you go. So these are an example on how we're seeing AI in automation. Of course, there's all the regression stuff, right, that we want to use in our result analysis capability. That in performance makes a lot of sense, but it also makes a lot of sense in functional. Like, what are the most problematic test cases? You know, what is the most volatile developer you have? So when this person does that, should we do more tests or less tests? There are multiple areas that we're investigating right now. But we started with the SDK. And of course, for those of us that don't know how to code and want to go in automation, we are using NLP as a way for people to write scripts without having to write code. So that's one way of looking at it too.
Awesome. And for folks that are more interested in AI, stay tuned for the 12:30 session with Iran, who has a cool session on AI. Thank you too so much for your time. I'm stoked about this. I think it's a great direction. I love what you're doing, and I hope more people get involved and check it out for sure. Any final words of wisdom before we go?
No, I just want to thank so much everybody for the time.
Awesome.
Go, Vicky.
Yes, I would like to say thank you so much. And I know it was a lot of information. And if by any chance, after there are questions, feel free to reach out. We will be more than happy to engage in further discussions.
Awesome. Thanks again so much for your time and what you do for the community. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
All right,
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Awesome.